Yes, can you see it? Okay. Our lesson, two things I have to tell you. The first thing is the enrollment for the exam. So please, yes, to do that, because it's this week. It started last week, but I told you that, yes. And yes, the day of the exam is yes, okay, we have seen that. But I wanted to say the last lesson, so the last meeting we have in this semester, we will talk about, we make a kind of summary. So to prepare the exam, the oral exam, which you just choose one thinker and one artist. Yes, and you can combine it as you want. So you could choose Thomas of Aquinas and, for example, Warhol, yes, but you can also choose it in the way you can put two things together, the theory and the concrete, yes? It's the same as we have done last semester, in the first semester. But I will explain it, or we will repeat it, everything in the last lesson, but that's the plan, okay? So for today, we have the artist. So what we wanted to do last, what I told you, to make a kind of summary of what we said last time about Thomas of Aquinas. So to get into the work of art. So what I would like to do, because I've seen, now I got a lot of homeworks, because I sent you the book. It's very difficult to find material in English. So thank you so much, Juana, because you sent me the link, and so at least we have this kind of, this kind of website, and also some articles, and I found some other things, but it's not easy because everything is in French, yes, and this beautiful book I have is in Italian. But nevertheless, I wanted to talk about this artist because he's amazing. I know him personally, and we are making a huge exhibition now in Venice. So I really think it's worth to work on his art, yes, and with the material we have. So perhaps my first question would be because always we start with this kind of looking at ourselves, the way we try to make the homework or to look at the work of art. So what was your experience with this artist? I've seen it was not easy, first of all, because of the material, but I had the impression also it was not clear what to do, yes? Because normally we take a work of art or I make a question, yes? And now I sent you a very concrete question, but what, did you see, was it easy or not easy to make the connection to Thomas of Aquinas and Kim and Yong, who's a Dominican? So there should be, or there must be, a kind of coincidence. What do you think?
Morning, everyone. I can try to give it a go.
Yes.
This is Juana. The author that I found that was very interesting to me was a Dominican, last name is Hernandez, if I remember, Felix Hernandez. And the way that I made the connection between Aquinas and Jung's work was this whole topic of doing theology through art, which I'd always thought about that they were distinct. And now I can see that the art of Jung, or at least his expression of it, could be considered theological language in a proper way, not as a graft or one thing on top of the other, but as actual language for expressing theological thought. Just his art itself had a lot of light, and it did look like calligraphy after I read the other email that the professor sent. But it was the first time, at least for me, to really see that art itself could be connected to, is an actual language of expressing a theological perspective, which was for me very novel. And then connecting it to St. Thomas Aquinas, then is my reaction to that piece of art was a new piece of understanding of what art can contribute to theological dialogue. My initial thoughts.
My question is why, I mean, we have seen, okay, we have seen also Warhol, we have seen other artists. Why was this connection so obvious? Because we normally, for you, because normally we have theology through figurative elements, symbols, and so on. So what was this kind of new, as you said? Why was it new that you could see really theology or the connection to it?
It was the reaction that I had when I now have a reaction to a beautiful piece of art, or a piece of art, whatever, whether it be beautiful or not the point, but that impulse, that reaction is that is actual an impulse of God, of me having a reaction. So that's where I make the connection with Aquinas, that he says that there must be a reaction, right? And
yes,
in that for me, the reaction, an awareness that reaction is actually the language or the impulse, right? That it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was it.
Okay. Because that's interesting. So it's more in the reaction itself. So in the way you encounter it. Okay. For the others, before we get,
I can share.
Yes.
To build off of what Letty was saying.
Madam, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm happy you are in. What was the problem with the link?
We did not get the link, so we were waiting.
Strange, but why I sent it to everybody, no?
Yes,
the link?
now somebody forwarded to me. Some others also are waiting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And all this. For the ANS, we all are waiting.
But the others, now everybody is in. I see that. Wait a second, I just make, it's Juana and Katie, Maria, Stephen, Magdalena, Kim, Kevin, Ernst. Okay, Deepak. A new share. Okay. So my question, so coming back to okay, now I sent it to her, and now that my question was, now coming back to our topic, now she arrives, okay. What was the, your experience with this artist, and the connection to Thomas of Aquinas? That was my question. And so could you just, perhaps another one, tell me what your experience was? I just want, now you can't see anything anymore. Okay, so can you just tell me what was your experience? Did you see a connection? Was it difficult to, I don't know, it doesn't. Now I got a problem with the, now my system broke down. Okay, wait a second. Oh, it's stupid. Okay, here, Thomas. So. Okay, now everybody's in, everybody's fine. So could you, yes, now, could you see the connection to Thomas of Aquinas and Kim and Young, or was it difficult? And why?
I can share.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yes, Kathy.
So I was going to build a little bit off of what Letty said, the idea of seeing theology in the art. For me, it was this sort of drawing into it a little bit. I came across a quote that he's trying to help people see the invisible, and that kind of struck me, that we're moving in this direction of trying to see something perhaps that invisible, like seeking the face of God. So that for me was sort of the way of being able to start to see the doing of theology. In connection with Thomas of Aquinas, it seems that he perhaps relies on symbol, and the knowledge of symbols is necessary to understand some of the theological significance. In the same way that I think Thomas really, there was a lot of emphasis that we discussed on 2 points or 3 points of this indirect encounter of God, of this, this invisible encounter with God that Kim and Jung is talking about, but also that we recognize what we know, and we need to know in order to find God. And so there's a certain amount of knowing of the language as well that I think could be part of the tradition, both in terms of the Thomistic tradition, but also perhaps in terms of the influence from Korea, where he comes from. With, I think in the Confucian tradition, there's emphasis on education and knowledge for moral truths.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else who wants to communicate his or her experience before we come to the summary? Yes, Magdalena?
I can try, because for me it was kind of difficult to make the link between the two, between Thomas of Aquinas and Kim and Jung, because when I reread what we talked about Thomas of Aquinas, for me it was the main point of how did we say, the intellect, that was the main thing in Thomas. And for me, it was really difficult to find that again in Kim and Jung, because I was not really sure, do we talk about his intellect, or do we talk about ours as we see the painting? Because for me, those paintings, I liked them, and they kind of moved something in me, but to really make the link, I did not really make it, which was difficult for me. So I'm excited what we talk about today.
Okay, great. So yeah, that's the question. What is the link, or also, about intellect? Yes, what we said last time when we will talk about Thomas of Aquinas, the main points he offers to us. But yes, are there comments, or we see that it's really interesting that some of you you had this immediate, like Juana, the immediate impression there's theology. Yes, and as we heard now, it was more difficult. What is there? It's beautiful, it's nice, I also feel something, but where is the theology? I think that is the main secret, yes, or of this topic, and that's why I really wanted to take him as an example. Okay, so we jump in and we make, for the ones who couldn't come last time, we make a kind of summary. I have here the PowerPoint. So Thomas of Aquinas, we have this indirect divine encounter. So then that means the experience of God distinct from our direct encounter of him in the beatific vision, whether of current embodied state or in heaven. So this is one important point. The second point is the indirect divine encounter. What is it? So it means that the soul is conformed to God by grace. So therefore, that's what we said last time. The most important thing is there is grace. Whatever, we will also explain what is the intellect and how it works. But the most important thing is that this person has grace or receives grace. So therefore, the divine person to be sent to someone through grace, it is necessary that this is some assimilation of that person through some gift of grace to the divine person who is sent. Augustine Notable says that the Son is sent when he is known and perceived by somebody. For perception means a certain experimental knowledge. So 3 important points: grace, the person has to be sent by grace. Second point is that Augustine says it's to know and to perceive someone. So it means we need, that's Thomas of Aquinas, we need the knowledge, but we need also perception to perceive. Perceive, and that is the point we go in deeper, doesn't mean only to feel, but it means a certain knowledge which is experienced. So it's always about something we know and something we know how to experience it. Okay, next point. So it is necessary that someone is incorporated into Christ as a member, as a member of his through baptism, but just as a member of a body derives sense and motion from the natural head. So from the spiritual head, which is Christ, and his members derive spiritual sense, which consists in the cognition of the truth, and spiritual motion, which is through the prompting of grace. Okay, I just took that. I just have chosen the main quotations to make clear. What does it mean? It means that we are, this relation to Christ, that we are one body, the members of one body. And that means, there is a natural head. And from this spiritual head, which is Christ, we members derive. So that means we need the cognition of that truth to be a part of this body. So, and this, as we said, is through the prompting of grace. You see the connection between, being a part of a certain knowledge. But this is not enough, as we said. It is to, through cognition, which means cognition is, the combination of grace and knowledge. So the next one is direct divine encounter. In the saints, there is only touch. This seems to be false because Origen, distinguished 5 spiritual senses, saying that spiritual sight occurs when we see God. Hearing when we hear, and so on. Sweetness to touch when we touch, with John, the world of life. All these things are in all the saints, so they do not have merely touch. I apply to saying that the spiritual senses can be distinguished by likeness to the act of corporal senses, and thus they are in all the saints, as Origen says, and likeness to certain properties of the senses, according to which touch is necessary, and the others not. And in this way, because they are in the saints all things necessary to salvation, whereas in Christ they are all things which simply pertain to the perception of grace. It follows that all the senses are said to be in Christ, whereas in others there's only the sense of touch. Why did I choose this quotation? This is a quotation. It has to do with, you could say, a kind of the role of senses in the knowledge. So that means that there are many senses, but they are only when the sense is, the merely touch. So like in the saints, where all the senses are together for a kind of knowledge and living, so that your senses, lead to, as he said, to be all the senses as they are in Christ. So they are all together and they are all in a direction of knowing the Lord and knowing Christ. I could ask, what is the difference to Bonaventure or other thinkers? For example, to Gregory the Great. So how did he use senses? Could you answer to that? How did Gregory the Great deal with senses? And what does Thomas of Aquinas want us to understand the role of senses? Do you remember? Why is Gregory the Great? Why did we start with Gregory the Great? What he to do? What was his, problem with the senses? We talked about that with images, So what did he say when he said we have to read the Bible? We need the word. We need to be in touch with the concrete text. It's a kind of to sense the text, to sense the knowledge of the text. So in which sense have we got now in Thomas of Aquinas a kind of, a different way of dealing with senses, but keeping them in the knowledge, to connect them with the knowledge? Because for him, as we said last time, it has to do with our will. If we want something, so it's in a certain sense purified. It's a kind of purified senses. It's not all what we desire. It's not all we would like to jump on to take. But, the senses, we follow the senses, or we use the senses to clarify. Perhaps it becomes clearer here. The intellect senses, when David says, taste and see, because we are exhorted to experience God in relation to tasting. He does two things. First, he encourages us to experience. And second, he posits the effect of the experience, to see because. Therefore, he says, taste and see. An experience of a thing arises from sense, but one way of something present and in another of something absent. Because of something absent through sight, smell, and hearing, and something present through touch and taste, and of something present that is intrinsic through touch, and of something intrinsic through taste. But God is not far from us or outside us, but in us. And therefore the experience of divine goodness is called taste. Now the effect of experience is posited to be twofold. The one is the certainty of the intellect, and the other the security of the effect. This is when he says to see. So what does he mean? Is it the seeing in a very natural thing, what we see, what we recognize? What does he mean with seeing? So how is our seeing connected with the intellect and the senses? What is the relation between intellect and senses?
Madam?
Yes.
So can I say something?
Yes.
As I was thinking that it is, we get the knowledge, that intellect, the knowledge about the things and whatever, the knowledge we get through what we perceive, what we observe in the nature or in the things around, through our
Yes.
eyes, through our ears. So all the senses, through all the senses we get the knowledge. The message is sent to the intellect, what we perceive.
Yes. And so, yes, that's true.
So unless, for example, now for the blind man, he can sense it, but he doesn't know what is the color. So when we say it is milk is white, he only can sense it, but he cannot see it.
See,
So
he
his
cannot.
way of imagining milk will be different from what we can see. So
This, yes, yes.
So the message or the information, the intellect is developed through our senses, whatever we see and what we perceive. That's what I just feel.
Yeah, that's true. But you made now an example, a blind man. Can he see the Lord?
Yes, he can see the Lord.
And how? Why?
Because he can perceive through senses. He can, what do you call?
Yeah, but through senses. We are now with Thomas of Aquinas. Yes? So what seeing the Lord means, we know about the Lord. And our senses, it's a kind of, it's a kind of to justify, to explain what our senses feel, what our senses experience, has to be a kind of justification of what we know. There's a kind of interdependence between what we know about the Lord, but what we sense should be a kind of reflection and justification of what we know. Is that clear? Perhaps we go. So we. Okay, that is the last one. Okay.
So knowing about the Lord and knowing Lord, there is a difference, madam.
Yes, it's a different. Sure, it's a different thing, because one, this is, for him, knowing something, you learn something. Okay, you study something, so you know something. But knowing in a deeply way is something different, because it should be that your whole body is participating in this encounter of knowing, of encountering.
Yeah.
So that means that for Thomas of Aquinas, in that moment you encounter, it should be that your senses, in a certain sense, know the same as you know with your intellect. So they become like, the senses of the intellect, we call it. But it means like that it's impossible that you know something about the Lord, but you feel or you sense something bad. That's why it's so important that what you, as he said, for example, and that when we talk now about the I tell you the quotation. I just wanted to because so you know it better. For example, yes, when Thomas of Aquinas is talking about the beauty. Wait a second. So I have the quotation. So it's always about, and this is now perhaps it could be a help. It is about the creator and the creation. It's a permanent, you know, when you create something, when you do something, it comes from the creator. So that means he says it's, you know, it's caused by something, and then you have the consequence, and you have to affirm it. So this kind of causing something, the consequence, and to confirm something, you know, this is all connected. This is, and that's why the Lord is the beauty. The Lord is the beauty. This is something you could say it's the beauty, the Lord in the beauty of all the things. Yes. But this means it's a beauty which is absolute. It has to do with the absolute beauty, yes, and which means that you have a pure heart. With a pure heart, we say, you can see the Lord. So that is something to come back to Thomas, yes. He says, that's a quotation. It is if you are illuminated, so you see and you feel the splendor. And so in that moment, you can communicate to the others the truth you have contemplated. So it's not, listen, it's not only that you sit at home and you just learn something. It's not like Thomas of Aquinas is only about learning. No, it is a real contemplation of what you have learned, and what you have learned you experience inside of you. And this is because and that's why it's a kind of abstract beauty and abstract, you could say, knowledge, because it's for everybody and everybody can do it, but it has to do that you contemplate this, this truth. So that means, and I conclude, Thomas talking, for example, about beauty, yes? And beauty also, so that means for the beauty, there are three elements which are important. The first element is integrity and perfection. So that means that the things are computed, they are, you know, they become, they are closed up, or they are finished in a certain sense. They are not deformed, they are not on their way, they are not half, they are completely computed. And so that means there is important a kind of proportion and a kind of harmony between the parts. And at the end, clarity, so it's clear, and the splendor. And this is, you know, why they become beautiful, and they become good, and they become true. That's the same with his spiritual seeing. It's the same, you could say, it's the same system, or it's the same concept. So your eye is open, but it, you know, with your eye, with your seeing, the spiritual seeing, you see what is computed. You see it and you feel. Only if you feel your knowledge, which is computed inside of you, you really see. Is that clear what I say?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's Peter.
Yes, I know.
Please, is there any difference between the intellect and the interior senses.
Yes, sure.
Please, can you help us to?
Yes. So that's a good question. So and I try to find also a kind of quotation, so I can show you also in your text, because you have to see it in your text. So, for example, this is integrative emotions. Okay, so if you look at page 176 and 177, so here the author, he tries to explain what you said, this inner, the inner senses or the inner feeling. So that means, and here he describes it quite well, the difference between emotions as quasi-passions. So what does it mean? It means your inner senses, they have a kind of active willing, a declaration. So, and that means that the passion in a sensitive appetite follows the cognitive realization of having received something good. I repeat that. So the passion in the sensitive appetite follows the cognitive realization of having achieved something good from this realization. So that means there is a caused emotion of the soul in the sensitive appetite. Please, so it's not your inner feeling, so that you say, I just feel something, but this inner feeling should follow and is guided, by the sense of will, guided by, the inner hand of the will, which means that only in this sense, you are not just taking pleasure, but you are taking pleasure in what, you want to receive and you want to achieve. So that means it's this kind of fruit, not only for your own sake, not for the sake of anything else, but only for the sake of your will. And so he continues to say, it's not that he, that Thomas of Aquinas reject simply because they were superfluous, this kind of senses, or rather his alternative account of religious experience satisfies an anthropological desideratum, like that he calls it, that the human being, are with bodily, you could say, and their capacities, they have, or primarily, they are directed to knowing and experiencing this kind of material things. And so that's why the same emotion inform our responses to the divine as inform our responses to the created realm. And the same cognitive powers are responsible for both sorts of cognition. So what does it mean? I try to say it with my words. We have a kind of knowing intellectually, but we have a kind of knowing with our cognition, you could say the cognition of senses. So the senses are able to know something. And these are both sources which come together. Do you understand? We can really talk about a cognition of senses, as the senses have the capacity to understand, not like the intellect, but to understand what the intellect understands. Okay? because that means to see the true and to understand the true, or to distinguish the true from the bad or the false, the good from the bad. So senses themselves being guided by the inner will, become then in a certain sense purified and can reach an absolute abstract truth. Is that clear?
Yes, yes.
Really clear? Okay. Also for the others, otherwise I try to explain it with other words. But is that clear? Because it's a difference between the knowledge of your mind, your rational, intellectual understanding, and the inner, you could say, cognitive understanding of the senses. But both have, in Thomas of Aquinas, come together through, you could say, through the grace, sorry.
I have a question about clarification about
Yes.
what you just said about, so the cognitive senses, it's not understanding like the intellect, but it helps us distinguish. So is it moralistic in that it's helping us distinguish between good and bad? So there's a moralistic component to it?
Yes. Yes, there is. It's moralistic. Yes, it's a kind of, that at the end, your senses know what is good and bad. If you drink too much, and that's perhaps, but the body then feels bad. So we take perhaps a very simple example, or we do something even worse. I don't know. You smoke, for example. I never smoked, so I don't know, but you smoke, okay? So this is something why sometimes that's interesting. We say priests or nuns or sisters shouldn't smoke, First of all, it's bad for everybody, if not, but there is a kind of, this is something which is not good. It's not good for the body. It's not good for your health. And perhaps it's also not good for your spiritual life. Because smoking, so you could, in a certain sense, you could just obey that you say you shouldn't do that. Okay? But you should also, you could say intellectually, I know it's not good. But in a certain sense, how could I say, that's perhaps not a good example because you do not encounter the Lord, but it should be something that, that it's not only learned, I do not do that, okay? But if you encounter the Lord, you become aware, that in a certain sense, intellectually, it shouldn't be done, but also with your taste and your senses, it's just like as your senses know it's bad or good. You understand? But the encounter with the Lord in which you really understand it deeply is when the grace, if you feel the grace in which you're not doing it because you are happy, because this is the right thing, or this is the way to encounter the Lord. I think that's a stupid example because it's not that people who smoke never encounter the Lord. So it's a stupid example, okay? But what I wanted to explain in a certain sense is this kind of, it's coming together something which is deeply connected for Thomas of Aquinas, a rational intellectual approach, and then a sensual approach of the senses, a cognition of the senses which is independent from the intellect, but it's connected with the intellect because it's something that your senses are pure senses, good senses, the part of the senses which are, I say purified, moralized, not, but more, they really know these senses already, what is good. And then when these senses are led by the will, led by a deep knowing, they come together with the intellect in the moment of grace, and so you encounter. Very simple, explained in a simple, but is it really clear for you before we make the break? Is it
Madam,
clear?
Madam, please.
Pardon?
Can I ask something?
Yes.
So I just understand in simple way, the senses to be purified, the senses should be in connection with the will.
Yes. Yes,
So
they are. Yeah,
will.
sure. They come from the will. You know, they are guided by the will. And it's not only I do something what I want, but the difference between doing and action. To act, I just act. Woo. An artist is just acting. He's not thinking. He's not doing anything. He's just like throwing it out of. That's the big problem. Throwing it out of his body. This is not what I mean. You know.
So
it's
that
like,
means all our actions and whatever we speak, what we do, and what we are, it should be very much reflective with awareness.
It should be reflective. It should be reflective.
Awareness.
Yes, it should be something I'm doing. Other comments? Yes.
I have a question. For Aquinas, is the will to desire the good? Is that kind of how Aquinas is looking at the will?
Yes. Yes.
Because
sure.
I think that might clarify if we start where it's, you know, the purification piece. I think the will is oriented for Aquinas then if it's aimed at desiring the good, and we're kind of seeking God. I mean, that's where the moralistic component comes, because the will isn't really just choosing what I want, it's desiring the good. And the right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
So yes.
Okay.
So this is what I said before with in the quotations. Yes, it's the desire. It's the desire for something higher, for something perhaps not visible, for something absolute, for the good absolute. But it's a will to desire it. You want to want it. No? You can desire whatever you want, sweets, yes, or whatever, also things like that. But this is not like, it's not a desire for something. It's the desire for the good, for something which is, you know, to reach. You need to reach it, but the important thing is that you want to want it. You want to desire it. Thank you for this, but I had it in my quotation before. This is really, and that's why he says it's so important that we want, you know, that you desire, but what we desire, we already know, you know? We know what we desire. We want the Lord, and we can learn it. We can know about him. And this desire, it's very Platonic, should become strong inside of us, should lead us, should tear us, should guide us, should direct us. Okay? This kind of wanting, or the will to desire it. Yes? And this is for this, it's different. All the questions before, if an artist is just desiring whatever, a beautiful work of art or a beautiful this, and this is the question. In this case, in Kim and Young, because he's doing it out of himself, yes, without having now an absolute aim. because it's about the gesture. That's why I've taken him. It's all about gestures in in Kim and Young. Yes. So he is the will of gesturing in a certain sense. Yes. And the gesture is the desire for. I make a line because this line is desiring the good and the Lord. You know, and so it's in this will. Is it clear? Clearer? We will do it now with the artist, so perhaps it becomes even clearer with the artist. Okay, and so we make a break now. It's 30, so we meet 45. Okay, in 15 minutes. So you have a break and. Hello. Are you back? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Yes. Good. Perfect. Okay. So let us jump in our new artist. So from Gregory the Great now to Thomas of Aquinas. And I hope we can do another one until the end of the next week. We make Bonaventure and the Franciscans, or we make the Jesuits. We have to choose one of them. Okay, that we can see. But now Kim and Young. Kim and Young. I sent you these two, but this is the artist. Yes. Perhaps you have seen it on the website. So he did a lot of different works of art. But now the question is, so we can also look at this, or we can look at the one I sent to you. Okay. So can you explain now, before we said, just to get into, what is now his spiritual seeing? Not what is the theology, but what is, well, it's connected, but what is his spiritual seeing? What is he seeing? And, or as you say, makes seeing. What does he make seeing? Can you answer, please? Nothing?
I can share one thing.
Yes. Is it so difficult? I have the impression this artist and this lesson is really, it's more difficult than I expected. Okay, but it doesn't matter. So we try to do it together. Okay, so please, Katie.
Sure. A couple of things that I see when I look at this painting or this work. For me, I see a sense of trying to convey something that's not visible, as I think I shared at the beginning. I see the movement, I see lines, and that the black line for me always is very moving, almost dancing, almost song-like to me. I see the beauty of the colors, very, very bright. I think there's a lot of harmony and balance in it, in what I see in that way. But I see that trying to make visible something that we can't see, trying to draw us into that is one of the things that strikes me, as well as an incredible use of light to do this, often allowing the light to shine through his work. In comparison, do you want me to talk just comparison of the picture between Fra Angelico and
yes. What have they got in common? What have they got in common?
I in some way, it seems almost a very abstract imitation of Fra Angelico's in some ways. You see the gold background, the traditional gold background with figures. Here you see in Kim and Jun's work, for me, what I saw was this bright yellow background with the divine action in it. Perhaps we could take the colors to be symbolic, the blue for Mary or something. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but for me, it seems to try to capture the mystery of the divine encounter coming into humanity in some way.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. That's for sure that we are talking about this, and you are right. It's about the harmony, and it's about the bright color, yes, and it's about this mystery divine encounter. This, in a certain sense, every work of art tries to show. Okay, so there's a mystery. There is happening something. There is something. They want to reveal, and here we have something interesting. It's the word which is incarnated and becomes light. Yes. So this is something specific. We have to, perhaps I just say 2-3 things to get into this art and thinker. This artist, Kim En-young, he's Korean. He had a very difficult life, and he because of the war, because of many, he lived really in a way that he they say also he had really like no hope anymore. And when he was young, it was like nearly suicide he thought about, because he didn't know how to go on anymore. The suffering and in his country and all what he lived there was so, for him, as he is very sensitive, and for him it was nearly not to support anymore. And then he got in contact with the Dominicans, and also because his father was a calligraphist, so he made calligraphy. Yes, and this is something important for him. So also for him, he wrote calligraphy. And for example, just to you have the book, but it's like, you know, calligraphy and the scripture. He came from the calligraphy to the scripture, and there was a kind of connection, which for us perhaps it's not so clear. The calligraphy is where, you know, that writing the word, designing the words. And for him, just to say 5 important things. Calligraphy is to breathe. It's like breathing. You breathe in and you breathe out. And so for him, to write calligraphy was like breathing. Second point, this is like, you know, also this kind of when you breathe, you have to breathe out, and so you are empty, and then you breathe in. This kind of movement has to do also with this, with the nature, the birds, and also the trees. For him, it was something like making this kind of to design it. It's making kind of flowers. So, you know, this kind of word or calligraphy to express, it was, you know, and he discovered the aquarelle. So he started to work with the aquarelle. Later on, he made these very famous windows, yes. But, and also, you know, it's a sign of liberation, the Chinese and the Korean. It has really like also historical impact, but it has to do also to combine I just say now everything which was so important for him, and then also changed and turned into a kind of his religious life, what he had later on. But this remained important for him, this connection with the heaven and with the world, heaven and the earth. Yes. So that means there are, you know, this design is something you have a kind of capacity. The capacity means that it's organic. It's something, you know, you fill it up with something. You fill it up with yourself, which something, you know, but which is not only yourself, because when you fill it up, it becomes itself. This is very, for me, it's so fascinating because it has a lot to do with the theory of art in general, what art is. But he talks about the calligraphy. So for him, you know, as also a Buddhist background, you know, he has the calligraphy is, to make a summary of it, the calligraphy is a sign which becomes abstract, but in every part of this calligraphy, it conserves the reality, the memory of a physical reality, which is present in the nature. And so it's a kind of spiritual reality, because the human being, you know, knowing to make it and to participate at this kind of breathing becomes a part of the breathing of the universe. And so creating a kind of harmony. I repeat it once more, because our question is how this kind of Buddhist a vision of the universe and of the creative act is then, you know, transferred and became realized in the Dominican religious world and art. Okay, this is a bit what, when I say the relation between calligraphy and the relation between the word, which is for us in religious art, Catholic art, is incarnated. This is our question. How can you incarnate what? And I repeat it once more. So it's the calligraphy, it's a sign which becomes abstract. But at the end, it's a kind of trace, a trace which conserves the memory of a reality, a physical reality, which is present in the nature. But this is a spiritual reality of the human being. Why? Because the human being, with his capacity, this is very Ignatian also. It's an Ignatian thinking. The property, so that you have the conscience to do it, you participate at this kind of sophio, this kind of respiring, the respiring of the whole universe, which in that moment comes in harmony. Okay, so that means, oh no, can you repeat what I said? What is the main idea of the calligraphy? What is really the essence, the being of calligraphy? Can you explain it to me, please? Just in a sentence or with your own words, so that we go from one step to the other, because it becomes always a bit complex, more complex. So what does it, why is for the Korean and also for the Chinese, but what is the calligraphy about? Is it about capacity? Is it about the universe? Is it about the respiro, you know, to breathe? What is it about? Yes?
Professor, when you say respiro, do you mean exhale?
Yes.
Exhale. Okay, so the
sorry.
no, that's okay.
Yes.
I'm
okay.
Excuse with my
Yes, it's
Spanish.
like breathing in and breathing out.
The exhale, the exhale. So when you're
Exhale.
saying the calligraphy, I'm understanding that it is a tracing of what's there that we might not be able to see, right? So that's at least how I'm understanding it, a tracing
That
or a
is-
capturing
Yes.
of what we're not seeing, but he can capture this through this sense of calligraphy as well. Almost like the picture that you showed us before of the angel whispering
Yes.
into the ear.
It's the same.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And not the same, but there's a connection. Okay, great. The angel is talking to Mary. We see it on the golden background. We see some words, but we can't see it. It's like a wind. It's like the spirit. Okay? It's like something like that. Okay, others. I have seen Ernst.
Yes, I tried to say, I think it's, what's about calligraphy? It's participating in an universal harmony. It's not just doing a sign, but it's a kind of participating in an harmony that is that was already before the doing of the calligraphy, and that is not only shown, but it's really participating. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's true. It's like, it's first of all a trace. So tracing something which we are not able to see, as Juana said. It's a participating, really being in, not only being in, being it in this moment. So it's not only a sign or a symbol telling us an allegory, a metaphor, or whatever. No, it's being inside. And as you said, because being in something which was before. There was already harmony before. And it's not that I create the harmony. I'm participating at this harmony. Okay, beautiful, thank you. Other comments? There are other elements.
Yes, I will
Yes?
try. I don't know if I really understand very well, but so calligraphy, you can see the lines, the colors, and it seems nothing there, it's abstract, but when you look at it together, it really creates beauty.
Yes.
And there's a sense of harmony. And for me, spiritual seeing is because of that, the beauty and harmony, it leads to the absolute beauty, which is God.
Okay, okay. This is, but that we have to, perhaps we have to describe more. Yes, because we see the lines, but as you say, these lines create a kind of harmony together. They create something together. Yes, which seems to be absolute. Yes, or seems to be, you know, going beyond what we see. Yes, that's true. But coming back to the calligraphy, there's one element which is so important to understand, then the gesture. The gesture, the difference between, you know, making calligraphy, so designing in a certain sense, designing and, you know, to use your gestures. Okay, which perhaps it's the same. But now, what is important in the calligraphy? To participate, but there's another element which is so important for Thomas of Aquinas. The intellect, the knowledge. What do we need to know? Do we need to know everything about the universe? Do we need everything to know about whatever, a topic, a concrete topic? What do we need to know?
Well, for Thomas Aquinas, the truth is very important for him. We need to know what is true. And also, as human being, we are kind of designed humanly to desire to know what is good, what is true, and what is beauty.
Yes, but I wanted with the quotation I told you. I wanted, because I want to be very concrete. It's such a complex topic, so I don't want to. If we go back to this quotation I told you, you know, I just translated it now, but it's, you know, there is one, the proper conscience So doing it is the point. Creating it, the process of creation of a calligraphy makes you not only participating, but makes you also acknowledging, as he said, the memory of a reality. Because you are able, to put this reality in your calligraphy, in your sign. And that means to be, that your own spiritual movement and doing is participating, is a part of it, of this participation. Is that clear?
Sorry, madam.
Because the calligraphy was made by a human being. But, as it's not only a sign filled up with knowledge, I put the dog and the dog means that. I put this and it means like that. As the calligraphy is your own design, your own, you design yourself in a certain sense. And in this moment, creating the memory of a certain reality. This is very different because it's like concrete alive. It is alive in that moment. It's not a content you learned and then you just repeat it. And it's a memory. Yes, it has to do with memory. You know it, and you learned it, and then you put it there, and then, you see it. No, it's this moment, and that's why this moment of doing it, and that you are doing it with your spirituality, it becomes so important to show the memory of reality. So, is it clear? Questions? Comments? Otherwise, we go on.
I would like to comment.
Yes.
Is this the connection as Thomas sees with the body, who is Christ? We are already part of it. We know this kind of participation, but I am a very concrete and real person, and this is the grace that I can be as Steindl, as myself, a part of this body, Jesus Christ. Is this the connection to Thomas of Aquinas?
It's exactly the connection.
Okay.
This is exactly the same, only that it's not about Christ, but about the universe. So you are a part, and the knowledge of the universe, it's a knowledge which is inside of you. And you are connected with everything for them. You're connected with everything. And this kind of knowledge, in that moment doing it, you are a fragment, but you are all. You are part of the universe, but you are also distinguished from the universe. And this is the principle, the same principle, you could say, for Christ and the human being, as you explained it for Thomas of Aquinas. It's exactly that, only wider for the universe. So this is now the question: how did he come from this wide, being in, being a part, being distinguished? Yes, creating a knowledge which I already have. I have it inside of me. But creating it to give this kind of memory of what it is. So that means for him, to understand or to complete this kind of understanding of calligraphy, it has to do with a kind of excess of the view of the way of seeing, and also your hands doing it. It's much more important, I would say, than in our normally in our Christian art. Yes, it's really doing that. The hands are doing it. The hands, like, you know, like your mouth and your words and your eyes, you know, are it's the place where it happens. And so that means so it becomes essential. And so, you know, these cosmic powers, you could say, which are dominating the universe, they're like, they say, like clouds, yes, like something, a movement, like you know, like birds when they fly. And this is happening when then the human being is creating this calligraphy. So that means for him to paint is something like, he says, it's in silence. It's in inner silence because he's doing it inside of him. And he said, it's like to celebrate, later on he said, to celebrate a mass. This is interesting because Paul VI, the Pope, Paul VI, he said, to celebrate a mass is analogous to the creation of a work of art. The creation, the process of creating a work of art, you know, from a real artist, not everybody, but really creating a work of art. So that means we have now this kind of sense of the nature of the human being, but also his future and his destiny. And this is the calligraphy is a manifestation of that. A manifestation, as for example, for us Christian art, if an artist is doing it, we talk about the promise of him also. Okay, so having now, so that means the calligraphy in this sense is a kind of pre-model sign. It's something which is, you know, which is which we call in the Christian art, we call it das Urbild, so the origin image. You know, the origin of the origin, when we really talk about the Mandylion. So when we know, or the veil of Manopello, when we know the first moment in which the face of Christ was imprinted in a kind of, you know, thing. And so the first image. And this is the first image of the human being, because we are the image of the Lord. You understand? So for them, it's like this breathing, the first breathing, the first moment, movement, sorry, the first movement. And that, with the calligraphy, you know, you go back to this first movement of you could say, he said, the quotation is, the being is what is not finished, and but it's always becoming. This is the sense of this kind of calligraphy, yes, which is never ever ending, because it's in a process of becoming. And that's why he called it this kind of pure art. Oh God, we have 2 minutes. And so that means now in this, you know, it's an organic, that's why for him, it has a lot to do with to recreate the creation. It's a kind of really, it's the creation in which the physical world, and that's why it's very close to Thomas of Aquinas, but that's not the conclusion now. I'm trying to explain it, that the physical, the physical body, the physical world and the spiritual world, they, you know, they have a kind of conception together. They come together. And so they become an organic creation. Kim and Yong, he said the calligraphy, it expresses, later on when he started then with the Dominicans, he said, it expresses the gesture of the Lord as a creator. Do you understand now? You don't understand. He says, and this is a quotation, he said, this kind of coming from the calligraphy, so we can perhaps understand it better, in front of scripture, which now became for him, you know, the place of the Lord. He said, he expresses, it's the gesture of a Lord as a creator, who, you know, who has chosen his people and so on, and, you know, becomes body then in Mary, you know, and then crucified and so on. So that means, you know, this Lord, you know, the word of the Lord is inspired by the scripture, you know, but it's confirmed in the gesture of the artist who is doing it. So that means it's Christian, it's this kind of, you know, and that's why he said, it's only, you can only receive it. You can only receive it through grace. And so that means that, okay, perhaps I stop here. That was a bit the introduction to understand the calligraphy, and now coming to his art, we have three, if you have 2 minutes, we have three main aspects. The first aspect is, which is connected, where to understand where he comes from and how he integrated his Buddhistic and very, you know, universal way of seeing the creation now with his Dominican life, you could say. First is the relation between praying and gesture. The praying and gesture means it's not the same, praying and a gesture, but they are synonymous, one with the other. And there is a very tight relation between these two. So the praying is in relation and in dialogue with the encounter of the other. And, you know, in this dialogue, there is a deep, intimate conversion with the Lord. And this, you know, comes out in a kind of gesture, which is which accompanies and completes the expression. So that means what he's doing, he says, he is praying the disegno. He's praying the design. Design is not the right word, but you know, he's praying disegno, the line. He's praying the line with his body and with his hands in the space of the encounter. And so to open up to the divine, you know, which we see, and this is interesting because he's coming from Dominican, the Saint Dominican. And I'm in Germany, for example, my mother, she's in a group, yes, of with Dominicans, women, sisters, Dominican sisters, and they make, how do you say, gymnastica. They make sport. So they take the movement of Saint Dominicus, they make this movement while praying. It seems like yoga, but not a yoga, yes? With all their you know, habits and so on. But that is what he is trying to do. The 9 ways of prayers of Saint Dominicus. So he is, while he's doing that, you know, while he's designing, praying the line in a certain sense, he is moving in this movement of prayer. You know? And so this prayer becomes expressed. And it becomes a gesture, you know, which becomes for us then in color and form and line visible. We have to stop now. I think I gave you a lot to think about. Yes, and what I would like to do is next week to come back to this topic, because we have not finished now everything. Yes, but that in the first hour, perhaps we come back to Kim and Yong. So I will see that I sent you something. So you can, I will send you a text and then a question to understand better now from Kim and Yong, from the calligraphy to Kim and Yong, and then to Simone Martini. You know, what is there? What is really the, you could say, the dogmatic, theological connection, but, you know, in their spiritual seeing. So why is the spiritual seeing between, not of Simone Martini, of the artist of this painting here, but of the figures which are represented here? Why is this spiritual seeing the same as or similar to Kim and Yong, and then to what I told you in the calligraphy? So what has this, and then at the end to Thomas of Aquinas? Is that okay for you, or is it too difficult? Can you tell me something?
For me, it's okay, but the others.
We can try. We will try.
Yes.
But do you feel, I just want to know, do you feel lost, or do you feel a bit of security? Do you sense a bit? Do you?
We are getting, madam.
Yes.
Is it getting better?
Next week it will be a little more clear.
Okay, but we, if you want, do you know what we could do? We could do an extra lesson. Who wants? We could meet also for an hour, okay? Thursday, perhaps Thursday afternoon as usual. And just who wants, I will send you a link, just to look at it once more, you know, with a bit of time, perhaps with all your questions you have, because Kim and Yong is painting Thomas of Aquinas, the spiritual seeing of Thomas of Aquinas. This is a bit, you know, our, our, how could we say, this is what we try to see. Yes? Okay. I leave you now, and I will send you the link perhaps for an extra lesson, but nevertheless, next week we will meet, and I prepare, as I did for Ignatius, Teresa d'Avila, and Warhol, and so on. I prepare a PowerPoint with all the main points, okay? Not with quotations as we did today. I make the main points of Thomas of Aquinas, main points of Kim and Yong, and then main points perhaps with Simone Martini. Perhaps then, you know, also if one is said with theological terms, one is said with artistic terms, and the other is said with spiritual words, you will see the analogy. Okay? We will try that. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Excuse me, ma'am. One
Yes.
clarification. Ma'am, are you
Yes.
sending the summaries of all the homeworks that we have sent?
Yes. The summary. No, yes,
Yeah.
I didn't want to make. I wanted. So listen. The summary for the courses I do with the PowerPoint. So that's why I sent you all the PowerPoints. Okay, so you have a PowerPoint where you have the main aspects, or a file. Yes, The homework, the homeworks, I told you, but I think it's, I shouldn't wait until I have all of them done because there are so many. So I just sent the first I have. Okay, so you can make up your mind and you have an idea of what I'm talking about. And the other thing is this, the summary now for this, what I told you, I would prepare for the next week so that you can really see, and we go through and we take time to go through the points. Is that okay? And something else, I looked up, I sent the link to all of you for the lesson today, but I sent it so early that I think you forgot about it, that I already sent it. So that's why I want to send it now always together with the homework so that you have the link and the homeworks all together. That's perhaps why it got lost. Okay?
Be better one day early, ma'am. Otherwise,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, for this confusion. Okay, but bye, and thank you so much. And see you or on Thursday or next week. Please don't be desperate. Please don't. It needs time. It's really these are complex topics, but you will get into it. I promise you. You will. It will be, every time it will become clearer. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.